Hello, and welcome to an adventure like no other. Far more than what you have known, there is something far more to be known than you can ever know. And it is all about you, the real you, your real awareness with your intuitive senses. You were never taught that the real you, your real awareness, is operating 5 bodies in cause and effect, restricting creation. You have been taught to think that you are only a one-dimensional human person, with a mind and emotions, and with a very short lifespan on this planet Earth. More than what your mind can grasp is your intuitive senses that can be opened to see beyond all your restrictions. You have always had an opening to see beyond what you have known, and this has been purposely kept from you, and this is where you have heard rumors and stories about your nightly dreams. Your so-called dreams is your opening to your intuitive senses that will allow you, the personal you, to excel beyond what you have previously known. Everyone has intuitive senses, and very few people take advantage of what is possible by recognizing something more than their mind can understand. Creation has its place for all of us, and then there is all life, which is far more than anything than what can become with creation. Everything we experience is necessary for us to survive with whatever we choose and decide our life to be. New Kevin Smith is the great witness to something more than what can be taught and learned in any school. It can be so that when anyone first listens to Kevin's intuitive side experiences, also known as real side experiences, from what their personal mind has known, Kevin's manner of expression will at first be rather different to comprehend. This is where this introduction and reading the new books and Facebook groups will help. Have fun deciding. DUANE the Great Writer and Seer.
In this real side experience, I would find myself attending a Skype call. Where exactly I was positioned in multi-dimensional creation was never revealed, but my location was somewhat lacking in regards to simulated feature, the environment non-existent. All that was present within the scene would be the sense of myself and that of being on a Skype call, though no technological equipment was being utilized to allow for this to take place, more the impression of it, and where the individual I was in communication with would be DUANE. In reality, as we all are this real awareness, isness, everything, on the real side, we can never be in isolation of any other individual, as a distance can only be as idea constructs made manifest through a consciousness, and applying as effects then only on the creational simulated side. Absent of the consciousness and all that is effected from it, and we all are this same isness life is, and no necessity then of connecting with others either physically or through a technological communication methods. That should we find ourselves communicating on the real side via technology, this represents a view of what may be at some point something manifesting on the physical. If we find ourselves, say, engaging with those we haven't as yet encountered on the physical level, revealing individuals as yet to make their physical presence known, and the potential contribution they may extend. Or perhaps such experiences are the utilizing of more advanced or alternative means of connecting whatever has been decided and formulated through a consciousness and effected as available mechanisms by which this can be so throughout the dimensions of creation. The real side tends to be more symbolic, and we are to recognize what is being conveyed aside from what is literally taking place. And so, should we find ourselves engaging with communication mechanisms and technologies, it can be so that we are to determine what is beyond that which is being literally experienced. Additionally, certain features of our experiences are there for no other reason than to improve the chance of our recollection of them on waking. In essence, the more detail included, the greater likeliness of experience retention, and this explains the often over-exaggeration being employed where our real-side experiences are concerned. My communication with DUANE in this experience, although the sense of the utilizing of a SKYPE to enable this was more along the lines of impressions as opposed to verbal exchange, and where such is the case, we tend not receive a dialogue that we can consider on waking, but more the overall essence and theme that is the nature of what is being exchanged communication-wise. I was providing DUANE with as though a status report, for it seemed that where this experiential view had opened would find me in the midst of an assignment, and where I was affording reports as to my progress. DUANE would be satisfied with my update, and necessary was it then to proceed with the operation that I was involved with. For now the scene, such as it was, lacking form and a simulated feature other than the sense of myself, the SKYPE call and DUANE, would fade, and I was now in the company of a group of other individuals. I wouldn't pay much attention as to their appearances or identities, but I recollect them as being human, impressions of they being also on their own respective awareness processes, but the one individual I did recognize, who in fact was taking the lead of our assignment, would be Ava. We appeared to be entering what visually presented as a series of enclosed passageways that had a rather natural sense to them, as though comprising of foliage. My first consideration on waking was that they were comparable to perhaps a hedge maze, although not designed for the same purpose, that of reaching the centre and navigating through a deliberately designed confusion of routes and dead ends, for our passage through was continuous, with no possibility of a deviation from our path. Ava would advise a caution as we proceeded that we must tread with care that our presence go unnoticed, that although no other body types were occupying the passageways we were traversing, interspersed throughout and along the edges would be curious screens, not unlike flat-screen televisions or computer monitors. Some of the screens would be blank, but others active, and where afforded was as though a window through to other creational positions and dimensions that on a scrutiny so revealed were all manner of body forms of various species and design going about their decided business. Impressions revealed that all the body types were of an ill-intended persuasion. Many were directly and consciously dark force affiliated, and their activities being displayed on the active screens reflecting this. Ava had advised the exercising of a caution, for possible was it that just as readily as we could perceive these other dubious body forms operating in their respective dimensions, potentially they could see us also through these screens, though it required more concentration and focus on their part, and imperative was it that we proceed stealthily, as though to do otherwise, and we would draw attention to ourselves. The various reptilians and assorted, distorted body forms would be alerted to our presence, and would not only then be able to utilize these screens to observe us, but the potentiality of they then electing to attempt interference and disruption where our assignment was concerned. The impression, then, that these nature passageways represented the transitioning across dimensions via a conduit or portal of some kind, that this was the decided mechanism present in creation, that our intended destination could be reached, but a journey not without a peril, as though the stepping through a swamp of crocodiles, and taking care not to disturb the waters, lest the reptiles are attracted and present as a threat. Rather, a navigating across dimensional creation through the overall simulator territory, that is the Dark Force Reptilian's dominion, on a sensitive assignment that preferable would it be to execute without Dark Force Reptilian entanglement. We were successful, however. Ava led us through the precarious dimensional portal gauntlet without drawing the attention of the ill-intended beings dwelling in the various dimensions that the screens displayed. Interesting that monitor or TV screens were featuring and served as effectively portals to other positions. For such a technology on the physical level are indeed conduits to other positions in creation, that as we look into our screens, we are in reality looking into other dimensions, and that which resides there, very likely, is regarding us through the same screens also. But anyway, as I said, our progression was devoid of incident, and the passageways terminated at a final position, which presented as a chamber of a kind. Ava, still leading the way, would again warn us to proceed with care, as though the chamber we were was in some way temperamental or delicate, and were we to proceed through it with haste, so could it be disrupted and unduly impacted, potentially rendered inoperable. I had the sense that the chamber operated on some form of ancient, though slightly defective technology, in association with the portal we had just progressed through, and indeed, as a few of the group were a little heavy-footed, so to speak, the chamber would shudder around us. Ava would raise her hand as though to momentarily halt us, and after a few moments everything would settle, the vibrating of the chamber subsiding. And now, as we continued through the chamber, the scene would switch to the back garden of my deceased grandparents' house. I've mentioned on previous real-side experiences that although generally the recreated physical level houses will represent the consciousness on the real side, in regards to the house that was my grandparents', its recreation serves as a meeting place between myself, the guides, and DUANE. On this occasion, the back garden of it was where DUANE would be present, including a congregation of assorted humans that were on their awareness processes additionally. Impressions revealed that indeed a sensitive assignment was in effect, with all manner of aware beings involved, as orchestrated by DUANE, and where Ava was leading groups back and forth between various dimensional positions via conduits and portals, and also that which had previously served as a purely meeting place, my recreated grandparents' house, was now in some way connected to this operation, representing a fixed position where the group of beings residing there had been operating from for quite the duration, as though the house, and indeed its back garden, were a nexus point, connecting in with various portals, and where the assignment we were involved with was being launched from. That although DUANE, Ava, myself, and the others of our group were coming and going as we saw fit and was necessary, the group present at the position as represented by the house would remain. And indeed impressions revealed I and my group had frequented this back garden nexus position on numerous occasions as we proceeded with our assignment, but from the perspective of the group always remaining at that position, it was as though each time we arrived was the first time they had encountered us. Though myself and my group retained memory of having been here and of the group always in attendance. The impression then that this position was one operating in creation and where the idea of time applied, that all those present within it would be subjected to the time frames that defined it, but the arrival of the group and myself always was at a certain point of the timeline, that, as I said, from the perspective of those immersed in the time frames of the dimensional position, it was as though they had laid eyes upon us for the first time with each of our visits. As I said, necessary was it for the group always present to remain, as though their perpetual station was essential that our assignment could be executed, that by virtue of their presence and whatever they were doing, served as a holding pattern or maintenance of this nexus point where the various portals converged, which allowed myself and my group to proceed onwards and execute our operations. It was all rather difficult to literally describe using the references I have available, but what I have outlined was the overall gist of it. And now the group and myself would be launched from what I refer to as the nexus point to another dimensional position for the undertaking of an assignment, one that was seemingly continuous and involved repeating this entire procedure for each time we embarked upon it. Ava and DUANE would remain with the group that was stationed at the nexus point, and now my group and myself were operating in a position which appeared to be the Earth as it currently stands. What we had been doing on previous excursions to this location wasn't made apparent, a continuous assignment as I mentioned, but on this occasion we were making a contact with certain key individuals. One would be a human female, and I was as though garnering her agreement in regards to our overall operation, an operation that was never completely defined and unveiled to my personal self, but for glimpses, parts and pieces of a detail. For at one point I would be accompanying the key female, I would be driving a car, she beside me, and necessary was it to mark the progress of a particular participant in the experience. There were innumerable humans going about their general lives present, but among them were certain humans included that were more along the lines of robotic inserts, I would suggest. These inserts had a far more limited program that they would be carrying out, their every action defined by its parameters, and presented as a very limited set of repetitive actions, that to the general, unobservant populace, this repetitiveness would go unnoticed. If they were animated by awareness was uncertain, for the consciousness program can be as restricting as has been decided and agreed to, and yet awareness will still be animating through it, if it is a viable vessel by which the creational process can be undertaken. It was all rather complicated to fathom as to what was taking place for my little personal self, but we had to determine the humans that were these far more limited and restricted consciousness program inserts and make them apparent to the key human individuals that we had established a contact with, including the female that was in the car with me, with the inserts identified so these key individuals could proceed with their contribution to the overall assignment, one that was quite clearly then in regards to the Earth and humanity specifically, as orchestrated by DUANE, who was overseeing our operation. One of the inserts I revealed to the woman and the other key individuals during the experience would take the outer form of the actor Matt Smith, best known perhaps for his role as one of the Doctors in the series Doctor Who, and that has starred also in the recent Game of Thrones series. After a period of observation, it became very apparent that the insert, for want of a better term, would always frequent certain streets at exactly the same time each day, and perform the same functions in precisely the same order. This would satisfy the woman accompanying me in the car, that whatever it was in Matt Smith's form was indeed one of these inserts, and where she now would go about her own operation in regards to this, whatever that involved. It's possible that operating within humanity are certain clones perhaps, or maybe simply holograms that have a programmed function, impressions revealed that it wasn't at the behest of the dark forces, but a technological source animating certain forms and operating through them, and that key individuals are tasked with identifying these inserts and carrying out an operation in relation to them, for ultimately humanity's benefit. I have mentioned on previous real side experiences the presence of what I term other-worldly children, that outwardly they seem to be human children appearance-wise, but are anything but. Their exact nature and origins are undetermined, though their overall objective is operating adversely in capacities that are to the detriment of humanity, and where I have witnessed them involving themselves in all manner of disruptive efforts, sabotaging as best as they are able the various life and awareness beneficial projects that are underway. And here, in this experience, not only was I assisting the key humans in identifying the inserts, but also these other worldly children. For on the surface they were indistinguishable from any other children, and unlike the inserts, that were more readily apparent by virtue of their curiously limited array of excessively repetitive behaviour, these sinister, ill-intended operating children would ensure their presence went unnoticed, revealing that they not only were operating on the other dimensions of creation, where I have witnessed and reported their activities on the real side, but on the physical level and among humanity also, carrying out whatever assignments that are to the detriment of humanity, as seems to be their singular compulsion, and the identifying of the other worldly children operating within humanity would allow these key humans to in some way remove them, that these ill-intended child beings no longer could carry out their insidious missions on the physical level earth. These key humans then were especially talented and gifted, and as part of their stepping up function and contribution, so they had the ability to carry out this particular avenue of robotic insert related activity, and to remove the ill-intended beings masquerading in the outer forms of children. The nature of these key humans was never revealed, if indeed they even were human, maybe an enhanced version, or even stepping up aliens perhaps, that like the sinister, ill-intended children, were possibly animating external body forms not their own, and carrying out beneficial Earth-based objectives incognito and under the radar. My assignment, or this particular part of what was an ongoing operation, was complete, and indeed the key female specifically would be set to accompany me back to the Nexus location. we would be reinserted back into the timeline of its dimension at the same point, and where those always in residence as the Nexus maintenance crew would, from their perspective, meet me for the first time. My group had been carrying out their own respective assignments, and undoubtedly would be returning to the Nexus point to afford DUANE a status report, as I would shortly be doing also. Our means of extraction seemed to visually present as a very advanced-looking vehicle. I would be reminded of the car in the movie series Back to the Future. The car wouldn't be in motion, it would remain stationary and as though transport us through dimensions back to the Nexus point, and in that regard it also reminded me of the movie The Time Machine. The time machine itself didn't move, but transported the passenger to alternate time positions. As it transpired, not only were the robotic inserts and other worldly children operating on physical level Earth, but dark force agents also, those specifically charged with targeting individuals carrying out operations of the nature that myself and my group were involved with. For a group of these agents would attempt to prevent our departure. The one leading them would be a muscular, bald man. But despite their best efforts, we were able to fend them off, activate our dimension traversing a car, and remove ourselves from the position we were in and beyond the reach of the agents. The experience would end there, but just prior to waking, as I retained a position of awareness between the physical and real side, the in-between state as I refer to it as, I would receive as though a download of information in regards to what I mentioned earlier, that of the computer screens serving as portals to other dimensions. That in fact, certain individuals have created YouTube videos that were one to specifically watch, so these are conduits that allow a potential connection to particular dimensions, but where the body forms residing there are operating in beneficial ways, awareness speaking, and where contact can be established and certain operations can be brought into motion as a consequence. Although a detail lacking as to which videos these are, perhaps more information will be afforded at some stage, and as to the nature of what these interactions with other beings from alternative dimensions is intended to achieve, by whatever hand is overseeing and orchestrating this. One advantage of the in-between state is the greater ability to retain a detail of experience, and especially specific terminology, etc. And what I received would be the overall name of this endeavour, the word Operation Gateus, that although the spelling may be incorrect, this is how it sounded.